Hello everybody, welcome back to Ted's Fish Room. I know it's been a while since I put a video up. Let's just say that I've been a little bit busy. If you've been paying attention to my other social media outlets, you'll know that I'm actually in the process of tearing down the fish room in the basement. I'll tell you more about that once that part of the project is done, but in the long run, I'm going to have a new fish room to share with you. But right now, this evening, winter is here. The sun is going down. It's not even 6 o'clock and I'm already exhausted. So I got to find something to do to keep myself awake, and I've decided that I'm going to do something that is aquarium related, but not exactly an aquarium. 2 words: Wabi-Kusa. Wabi-Kusa is a Japanese art form that uses emergent-growth aquatic plants in an artistic way. It's kind of like a way of aquascaping without the water. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the tank right now and what you have to do a little bit differently to grow plants emergently than to grow them submergently underwater. There is a substrate in this tank. This tank was a planted aquarium. This is a tropical aqua soil, which is a perfectly good substrate for growing plants underwater. But you have to remember that plants underwater get a significant amount of their nutrient from the water column around it. And you might take a fertilizer. Here's a typical fertilizer. This one is called Continuum. I think I got it in a gift bag somewhere. And you might add that to the water, and that's how the plants are going to get their nutrients. But they can't get those nutrients from the air. So emergent plants grow much better root systems that enable them to get their nutrients from the soil itself. But this aqua soil doesn't generally contain a lot of the nutrients. So what we use instead typically is we usually use a topsoil, or we use some other type of dirt. There we go, I'll let you see that there. Some dirt that is going to give it a little more nutrient. But I have another trick as well. I like to take a fertilizer and mix it with the soil that I'm going to use inside of the Wabi-Kusa, or inside the terrarium. Basically what it comes down to is a terrarium, emergent growth chamber, just to give those plants a little extra kick. Now you want this to be pretty wet because they're still aquatic plants, and where they grow, if they're not in the water, is on the very edge of the water. So you want your substrate to be able to hold quite a bit of fluid. That's one reason we don't use just that aqua soil, because the aqua soil is not very absorbent. And what would happen is you would put the aqua soil in and all the water would sit down at the bottom of the aquarium where the plants really can't get at it very well. So by adding the dirt, we are adding some substrate that will help it to hold water. We still want to drain a little bit. Just like playing in mud. Playing in mud's kind of fun. So now I'm going to spread it out on the bottom of the aquarium. Well, actually, I guess we'll call it a terrarium. I'm going to spread it out on the bottom of the terrarium, and I'm going to ramp it back up to one corner, kind of like you saw it when I had it in there before. Alright, well that looks pretty good. So let me go wash my hand off, and then I'll show you what I'm going to be using for hardscape in here. So for hardscape, I've got these nice pieces of blue granite, which I really like. And they're not very big pieces, but they're going to look pretty big inside a 10-gallon aquarium. And I've got these nice roots. And I like them because they have kind of stumpy pieces on top, and then they have root sections which can sit down over top of these rock sections like this. So the idea is I'm going to try to get a rockscape that has the wood kind of growing into it. And I've got several of these roots. I'm not exactly sure which ones I'm going to use. All I know is I would like to get it so that the plant, the roots, look like they're growing over the rock. And here's kind of a good way to do that. I'm going to start by actually taking one of these roots, and I'm going to actually put it right on top of this rock. I'm going to go ahead and put it in here. And that's a pretty good start. I'm going to get another rock in here, I think. then see if I can find another root that'll fit on that. I'm going to get one more rock over here on this side. See if I can get another root back up in here. One thing that I see people not want to do is break a piece of hardscape. This little piece of root right here is keeping me from doing what I want to do with it. And it's kind of nice to have that look to it, but it's not doing me any good here. So off it comes. Same thing with this really nice little piece back here. It's just more trouble than it's worth. There, see now I can get that piece way back in there like that. I'm going to push some of this dirt up underneath those roots because I really don't want the roots to look like they weren't a part of the soil. Alright, so I've got another rock. Now comes the question, do you throw another rock in there just because you can? One thing about this particular scape is I've got everything back up here in this corner and there's not a whole lot down here, and I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to be able to get a lawn to grow this direction, so I'm actually going to give this a little more of a focal point by getting another piece of rock in here. And if I can get this on there in a way that looks good, I might leave a piece of wood over here too. Okay, so this part over here I think looks really good. This part over here does not. I actually think this looks better completely without the root. I think this rock back here, let me turn it a little bit. Or maybe even yeah, there we go. So now I think that rock over there, once we get plants growing in around it, is going to provide us with a really nice kind of a focal point off to the right, while the main hardscape is over here on the left. So I think I've shown you this before. This is my aquarium sprayer. It's a big insecticide sprayer or fertilizer sprayer that I use only for aquarium use. And what I like about it is when I do aquascaping, I can use it to add water to the aquascape without messing up the aquascape. So how am I going to clean the glass? Remember, I want this substrate to be wet. So I'm going to go ahead and just use this spray of water to knock off quite a bit of that dirt. So I think that's looking pretty good. You know, some of these hard lines around the rocks and where the sticks come into contact with the rocks, that's going to be softened a bit by the plants. So I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to grab all the plants out of my emergent growth chamber. I'll take you down there to see that so you can see how it did. And then we will get up here and start planting them into this particular scape. I know that you're all curious, but here is what is left of Ted's fish room. It's a real mess right now. The only tank that has any fish or water in it is this 75-gallon tank right here. I mean, it's just chaos. So here is the emergent growth chamber tank that I put together a couple months ago, and you can see the plants doing really, really well. The alternate Thera is basically growing all the way to the top of the tank. I'm going to come up here and take a look at it. This is Hydra caudal tripartita. It's growing out of the water very, very nicely. There's a alternate Thera Reinecke. Notice the alternate Thera Reinecke is blooming. The blooms are right here in between the nodes, between the leaf and the stem. At least I assume that's a bloom. I actually already pulled some plants out of here to go to a club meeting, but I have a few left. This is the Star Agana Repens, and this is the hairgrass. This is what I thought was Yuncus repens, but I've been told that it's actually probably something else. Here is a piece of giant Highgrove that I took out of a tank not too long ago, and it's turned up pretty well. This is actually a type of lily. Notice that it's even growing emergently. This is Nymphaea Mica. So I'm actually going to continue to let it grow emergently and see what a lily looks like coming out of the water, off the soil, excuse me. But really, the best plant in here has got to be that Thera by Necki. So when I take one of these plants, I'll look at this one here, and you can see that it really put up some roots. So I'm going to pull all these plants out. I'm going to trim quite a bit of that root back so that when they go into the new Wabi-Kusa, the new emergent chamber, they'll have a chance to reset some of those roots and grow new roots again. So I'm going to take a few minutes and get all the plants out of here, and then we'll take them upstairs and put them in the 10-gallon tank. So you can see the basic layout of this design. I've got a lot of space back here to put some taller, bushier plants, and then lots of space in here for some lower growing ground covers and so forth. The main ground cover I'm going to put in here is that dwarf hairgrass, Eleocharis. And when you plant plants in this type of environment, you know, they can dry out, but it's not going to look as pretty when you first start doing it as it will in an aquarium. And when it starts growing they'll actually start creeping out from around the edges of where they're grown. It's a ground cover in your garden. And just like in an aquascape, every now and then I will come by and give it some water, and that'll help to push it down into the substrate too, and also keep it nice and moist. And when we're all said and done, we will put a glass canopy on this so that it will hold the humidity. So that's what's going to, the whole ground cover is going to be that Eleocharis. So here's a nice big piece of Hydra caudal. So I'm going to stick it right down here like this. But I'm going to go ahead and drape it. I'm actually going to pull it up quite a bit. And I'm going to let it get this look like it's growing like an ivy up over this pieces of wood. And the Thera, this one's a pretty short one, but the Thera I'm going to use right back here in the middle of the tank, all along the back, and in this area all the way up through here to kind of give it that nice dark and red background. Now, one thing about Thera, as it's growing emergently, is the leaves are not as bushy as the leaves of the submergent form are. So you actually need more of Thera in a terrestrial scape like this to kind of give you the same effect you might have in an aquascape. This is that Nymphaea Mica, and I'm going to plant it down here where it's really wet. Remember, water goes downhill, so down here in the really lowest part of the tank is where it's going to be wettest. I have no idea how this plant is going to do. I've never seen anybody do a Nymphaea like this, but I've got it, so we'll try it. So here's my giant Highgrove. Now what I'm going to do with this plant is, you can see where it was lying in the other terrarium, but put down a root right here. I'm going to go ahead and clip this. I'm going to take this giant Highgrove and I'm going to plant it probably in a place where you wouldn't expect me to. But I like the idea of having this as a focal point over on this side of the tank behind this rock, and it's going to fill up the space behind that rock. I'll put another one back there too. This plant just went into my so a plant that I did not have in that emergent growth chamber is Anubis. Now, I've never grown Anubis like this, but in nature, Anubis don't grow in the water. So they should do pretty well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this Anubis and I'm going to put them up close to the wood and the rocks, but I'm not going to glue them to the wooden rocks like I might in an aquarium. That's because I think they'll actually root better and grow better if they are grown on the soil itself. I also have, I don't have a whole lot of this, is that Agana Repens. And Agana is one of those aquatic plants that is typically considered to be high maintenance. It usually needs high light and needs a lot of CO2. So I'm gonna make a little patch of this, kind of as a highlight, right here around the base of this rock in this area. This is gonna be a little bit different, a little bit a different look. I don't know how well it's gonna do. It may in fact get completely overtaken by hairgrass, but you know, that's okay. If it can't compete, it doesn't deserve to be in here. So one thing else I'm going to try is I'm going to try to actually get some of this Willa Moss to grow on the logs and stuff. So I'm going to take some of this super glue and I'm going to coat all around this wood, and I'm just going to stick little pieces of Willa Moss to it. And I'm hoping that it will grow to this piece of wood. And I imagine I'll have to keep it trimmed if it grows big. I want to get some back here on this one too. Just kind of soften up some of these hard lines of this wood back here. Alright, I'm going to give this another squirt. Especially back there where the substrate's quite a bit deeper. Well, I think that looks pretty good. So there you go. On a winter's evening with nothing else to do, I took an empty tank that I was planning on sticking out in the back corner of the fish room that's being torn down and used it to hold the emergent growing plants that I really want to be able to clip off of in the future to plant for aquascapes. So you can have an emergent growth chamber with just the plants sitting in rows like a farm, or you can turn into something pretty like this. Now I can't say for sure this is actually Wabi-Kusa, because I don't really know what Wabi-Kusa is, but I do know that it's supposed to be basically aquatic plants growing emergently, and that's what I've done in this tank. The best place to check for updates on this aquarium is on my Instagram account or my Facebook account. I don't know if I'll come back and do a whole nother video on this particular tank again, but over the next few weeks and months, every now and then I'll snap a picture and put it up on those other internet places for you to take a look at. Thanks for watching Ted's Fish Room. Hopefully it's not going to be as long before I do another video for you again. But now the fish room is being torn down, projects should be starting up pretty quick.